border disorder making its way from south to north as governors of border states send migrants to less affected areas on the East Coast. All this while Customs and Border Patrol reports 2 million encounters at the southern border. What needs to be done to secure the southern border? Members of the House and Ways and Means Committee and Texas Congressman Jodey Arrington joins us now. Congressman, great to have you with us. The border certainly top of Republicans' agenda going into the midterms here, 45 days away from the midterms. Talk to me a little bit about the political ping pong happening with the flights that these Republican governors are sending migrants on to highlight their point that this isn't just an issue for Arizona or Florida or Texas, moreover.
Sure. I think that highlighting the issue and intensifying the debate by sharing the pain, especially with sanctuary cities, while at the same time very much exposing their hypocrisy, is a good thing and I think helpful, but ultimately the states will have to exercise their sovereign constitutional power of self-defense in securing their border, enforcing the laws, detaining and deporting, because I don't see this president changing course. Again, elevating the debate, raising the awareness, and exposing the hypocrisy, all good, but in the long run, we're still experiencing the flood and the economic and social cost associated with that.
Yeah. Former President Trump addressed the border at his rally yesterday. I want to play this for you.
Now we have the worst border in the history of our country. And you know what? I believe it's maybe the worst border anywhere in the world and maybe in world history, because no third world country would allow to happen to their border. They'd get out there with sticks and stones if they have to. They wouldn't let it happen. They wouldn't let their country be destroyed like is happening to the United States of America.
You know, I spoke with Congressman Jeff Van Drew last hour. We ran out of time, so I didn't get a chance to ask him. So in terms of the Republican plan to secure the border, building the wall, adding more funding for border agents, or ending catch and release, or keeping, Title 42 in place, I mean, how realistic is that given the fact that President Biden doesn't support any of those initiatives?
Well, I think we have to be realistic and honest with the American people. Republicans, if we win one chamber of the House, or if we win two, we still won't have the 60 supermajority in the Senate. And like you said, we'll have a Democrat president that's committed to this radical open border policy. So we've got to use the power of the purse to the extent we can to support border security and border patrol agents. We've got to exercise the political will to do that. And secondly, we have to have a robust oversight, investigation, and accountability within the administration. And that starts with the president, but also Secretary Mayorkas. I suspect that will end with an impeachment ultimately. But at the end of the day, I have a resolution. It's not going to add new laws. It simply affirms the state's right of self-defense, and that when there's an invasion, which we're seeing by the drug cartels, and the federal government fails to do anything, states are not passive victims of a failed federal government or a derelict president. They have the sovereign constitutional power to step up and fill the gap and protect their citizens and their border. And ultimately, we can support them. They'll be sued. It will go to the Supreme Court. But that's going to be really the last line of defense, sadly enough.
When we talk about more funding for securing the border, and I want to be very clear, I'm not saying that funding wouldn't be put to good use and wouldn't be necessary, but Republicans are saying they're going to stop the excessive government spending. What will it cost to secure the southern border at a time where Americans are dealing with historic inflation?
Well, it's a great point. I mean, we need to prioritize and allocate resources to the core mission of the federal government. And obviously, providing for the common defense and border security is that. I don't think we need 87,000 IRS agents. I don't think we need expanded Obamacare subsidies for people who make $250,000. And I don't think we need all this subsidy for green industry. I could go through the laundry list of the trillions of dollars that the Democrats have directed to progressive programs. But what we need to do is unshackle the Border Patrol agents to do their job. What we need to do is turn off the magnets that are drawing people here, close the loopholes that are being exploited with the asylum policies, and just enforce the laws of the land and secure the border. We can't even get this president to do that. And that's why I continue to reiterate the states and state leaders along the border have the right and have the responsibility to push back, step up, and stop this chaos once and for all. They have the right, they have the authority, and this president's not going to change. And we're going to do everything we can. I don't believe it's going to be enough to stop the deluge that's destroying our country and turning our country upside down.
Congressman, you mentioned also repealing the funding for the IRS agents. I'm just curious to know how that works, given the fact that President Biden has already signed the Inflation Reduction Act. But perhaps to Congressman Steve Scalise's point, he says, I've never gotten a phone call from a constituent saying we really want more audits from the IRS. So it's a winning message, but how do you do that?
Well, the president's going to have to address the American people, and Democrats are going to have to defend their position that instead of supporting border security, technology, Border Patrol agents, and instead of doing the things that will actually protect the American people, they want to harass the American people by creating new IRS agents, armed agents in many cases, that are going to try to shake down more of our hardworking American families. You're right. Ultimately, the president has to face the country and be accountable for these policies. We've got to push back. We've got to do everything we can within our power, which is budget in some cases, oversight in some cases, and policy in some cases where you can negotiate. But I have not seen the Democrats be willing to get off the current path and position we're on, which is just complete lawlessness of an open border, no matter what the feedback they're getting and the facts they're getting on the humanitarian crisis and the record number of migrants that have died and record number of Americans who are overdosing and the record number of crime and criminals that are coming to our country. Nothing seems to faze them, but they'll have to face the music every day, every week, week in and week out, when Republicans get the majority in the House. And that's the first place we've got to start.
Yeah. And Congressman Jodey Arrington, like you said, it's acknowledging that there's a problem, and there's still the failure to acknowledge that there's a problem and that the border is not secure. We appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for calling me.